What's up guys, Jeff from Sorta Healthy here. Today I'll be sharing my predictions for the personal training industry in 2023. 2022 ended up being a pretty good year for personal training in general. Most parts of the world are in a better place when it comes to the pandemic compared to 2020 and 2021, and that has led many people to get back into gyms, partake in fitness classes, and of course try out personal training. However, there are some current trends that could cause some headaches for fitness pros like you and I. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, consumer prices are up an average of 9.1% as of June 2022. The cost of food, electricity, rent, and other things has gone up a lot this year. In fact, that 9.1% increase in price is the biggest we've seen in the US in the last 40 years. When you do what we do, personal training, big spending increases like that are problematic because personal training is viewed as a non-essential thing by most. Basically, if life gets too expensive, our services are one of the first things to get cut out of the budget. It's not all doom and gloom though. I also have some positive things to say today as well. So buckle up and get ready because we're about to take a ride into the future. Before that, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already because, well, that really does help us out over here and that allows me to keep making free content for all fitness professionals. Thanks for that support, everyone. I really appreciate it. So this video will be uploaded pretty much right at the end of 2022. And like I said before, 2022 wasn't a bad year for personal training. Companies like Peloton, which focus on in-home fitness primarily, saw a big decline from where they were when the pandemic was at its worst. People really got back into gyms in a big way, and because of that, personal training to some extent followed suit. Private studios like mine probably got the best of both worlds to some extent. We never took a big hit, even when the pandemic was at its worst. And we rebounded faster because privacy means less people around you when you're doing a training session, and that's a good thing for multiple reasons. The only hardships we've really faced have been staffing ones, or literally not being able to find enough skilled trainers to train everybody who wants to do personal training. Before I go further, how is your 2022 working as a trainer? Make sure to let me know down below in the comments. Anywho, the Bureau of Labor Statistics estimates that the employment of fitness trainers and instructors is going to grow by 19% from 2021 to 2031. This is much faster than average for all occupations. There will likely be a stronger emphasis in combating obesity going forward, and the baby boomer generation, which is a big one by the way with disposable income, well, they're going to want to remain active to help prevent injuries and illnesses associated with aging. In my experience, all of that is true. 2023 isn't necessarily going to be an amazing year, but the longer term outlook is actually pretty good. I think the pandemic opened a lot of people's eyes when it comes to health and wellness. Just like with anything else, the healthier you are, the better off you are when nasty germs come knocking. Also, a lot of people gained weight during the pandemic, and many of those people are going to want help getting that extra weight back off. So in a lot of ways, we're in a really good place going into 2023. Of course, like I mentioned before, the cost of things like food going up is going to potentially mean less spending on non-essential things. People's pay is increasing, but not at the same rate as inflation or your money becoming less valuable. In 2023, I can see things going two different ways. And I think if you're ready for either scenario to unfold, you'll be able to profit handsomely either way. In scenario number one, the economy will stay okay. We're not in a terrible place right now, even though the costs of certain items are on the higher side. In scenario number one, the economy will stay relatively stable going into 2023, and inflation will continue to come down. To be honest, it has a little bit already, and eventually this will lead to lower prices on things like food or rent. In this scenario, trainers are going to continue to do well, and it isn't really going to matter what type of training you're doing. If you're offering a good product, be it one-on-one, small group training, or anything else, you're going to do well in this scenario. If you're not offering a good product, or if you're not in a good location, well, at that point, all bets are off. I think the Bureau of Labor Statistics forecast is pretty accurate though. As the baby boomers get older, they're going to want more personal training. They have time and money and a possible new increased interest in staying healthy. Then we have the more concerning scenario number two. In this scenario, the unthinkable happens. Well, really, it's not unthinkable. They've happened many times throughout history and they will happen again. But yeah, the unthinkable thing is a recession. Now, as personal trainers, we're pretty savvy when it comes to teaching squat form, and things like that. But I think it's fair to say economics is not usually an area where we excel. So basically, a recession is a business cycle contraction where there is a general decline in economic activity. Recessions generally occur when there is a widespread drop in spending. That widespread drop in spending can be caused by many different things. A pandemic, a war, even if it's far away, and inflation fighting efforts, all of which are happening right now, increase the chances of a recession or less spending on non-essential things. Many people are calling for a recession in 2023. Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan predicts a slight U.S. recession in 2023, but thinks the U.S. economy will fare better than most other economies around the world. JP Morgan economists are predicting a Category 1 economic hurricane or a mild recession. Many more notable people are also predicting a recession in 2023. Unlike a few months ago, most are calling for a more mild recession, not like the one we saw in 2008, which did result in the closure of many different businesses. That being said, there are still people saying that there will be a severe recession in 2023, and then there are people saying there won't be one at all. The more into finance, business, and economics you get, the more you realize one very important fact. We're not good at predicting when the economy is going to trend downwards or when we're going to enter a recession. Even the best economists in the world often predict these things incorrectly. Trying to predict a recession is kind of like trying to predict the weather that is a few weeks or months away. There's endless different things that can happen, and it's almost impossible to predict everything accurately. So no one really knows if there will or won't be a recession in 2023. There will almost certainly be one in the next few years either way though. The Great Depression occurred in the late 20s and early 30s, and then another recession occurred a few years later, and from there we've had one or two recessions every decade since. Again, no matter what, another recession will occur. It's just a matter of how severe it is and when it takes place. Even if it's a mild recession, which that is what most analysts are calling for in 2023, that still will affect people's buying power. Because of that, I think it's important to have a few different offerings when it comes to your services. One-on-one training is likely to take the biggest hit when a recession does eventually occur. The reason that is simple. It's the most expensive service that you'll provide. If you only offer one-on-one training and a recession happens, you'll be in much more danger than the business that has multiple offerings. So, what multiple offerings should you have? Of course, the answer here will vary a bit based on where you're located and whether you work for yourself or someone else, but I'm going to try to give out the game plan that I think will work out the best for the most people. No surprise, but this is how my own business is structured. This plan assumes that you do mostly in-person training, by the way. You should have your premium service, one-on-one training in most cases, range from around $1 a minute to considerably more than that. Your exact pricing will be determined by a good handful of factors. I have a few videos that focus more on how I think you should price your services. We don't have time to get into all of that in today's video. At this point, you probably should have some sort of small group training offering as well. Small group training typically involves 2 to 6 people or clients training at the same time. The idea is that when you're doing small group training, you're still giving all of the clients some individual attention, but of course, you're still working with a good handful of people at once. This allows you to charge less per person, but still make as much or more money in the long run. Some people still prefer the extra privacy and customized program that comes along with one-on-one training. But many people will be just as or more happy with small group training. I talk more specifically about pricing for small group training in these two videos right here too. But that being said, usually a small group training session costs about 50% of what a one-on-one session would cost. I run very small group sessions in my studio. We're talking 2 to 4 people max because that's just what works best for us. Because my small groups are on the smaller side, I charge just over half of what I charge for one-on-one training. The smaller the group, the more individual attention and privacy. If you're going to be closer to 6 people per group, you may want to keep your price closer to 50% of the one-on-one price. Again, there's other factors to consider here, and we're not getting into all of that today. The last thing that you might want to have ready to go in your back pocket is an online offering. We don't do a ton of online training. I don't advertise it at all in my studio, but we do enough of it for it to be a reliable side source of income. Essentially, we have a few online training options, some of which are on the more expensive side, and some of which are not. For all of our offerings, one-on-one, small group, and online training, we have 3 to 4 options to choose from. If you're doing things like session packages, that might look like having 10, 20, and 30 session packages available. You could also offer 1 month, 3 month, and 6 month long packages as well. When it comes to online training, it's kind of the same thing. We have some higher end options and some lower hanging fruits as well. The idea is to have a few different options, but not too many. If people have less spending power, my sales will change a little bit, and it might look a little something like this.
In a stable economy, about 50% of my revenue is coming from one-on-one training. About 40% of my revenue is coming from small group training, and about 10% is coming from online training. In a bad or unstable economy, I expect about 30% of my revenue to come from one-on-one training. I expect about 50% of my revenue to come from small group training, and I expect about 20% to come from online training. Again, these are all just estimates. This is currently what I'm doing right now over here on this left side, the stable economy side. But if the economy starts to trend downwards in a significant way, I wouldn't be surprised if things look more like this. Your sales numbers will of course look a little bit different than mine because your situation will be different. But my main point here is that having these small group and online options does give me some level of protection when the economy does eventually shift downwards.
Like we said before, we don't want too many options, but we want enough so that we can adapt if we need to.
If I had to pick, I think scenario number 1, or a relatively stable economy, is what we'll see in the upcoming year.
Overall, I think 2023 will be a good year for us trainers, but of course I don't know for sure. No one does. I do know that the options that I have in place will help me be ready either way though. Even if we get scenario number 2 or a recession, I'll be as prepared as I can be. I'd suggest that you try to get to a similar place. Anyways, do you guys think the training industry will do well in 2023? Do you guys have any questions or comments on anything that we talked about today? Either way, make sure to let me know down below in the comments. Anyways, that's all that we have for today, everyone. If you haven't done so already, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel because that does help the channel to grow and it does allow me to create more free content for all of you. Thanks for watching, everyone, and until next time, stay sorta healthy.